So on the ride here tonight, the person who was driving me asked a question about the retreat and about the yoga method of Chenrezig. And so I thought it would be good for me to explain this to everybody, because the title of the retreat was a bit confusing for her. You know, she thought, are we going to be doing yoga? And what kind of yoga? And like that. Okay, the Sanskrit word yoga means to unite, okay? To bring things together, to yoke together. And in this context, it means to try and unite our mind with Chenrezig. Chenrezig is the Buddhist name for Kuan Yin, or Avalokiteshvara. So we're going to be doing a meditation, the goal of which is to unite our mind with Kuan Yin's qualities of compassion and wisdom and kindness. Okay, we're not going to be doing exercises and things like that. We're going to be doing meditation to unite our mind with compassion. There will also be discussion groups and question and answer, and I'll explain the Kuan Yin practice and lead you through it, and we'll do it together. So it's something that people can come to, whether you're new or whether you're an experienced student. It's a practice that everybody can catch on to. When you're new, of course, you feel like it's new and unfamiliar, but the only way you ever get over something being new is by doing it. Yeah? So there's no other way to make it seem familiar except to be new at the beginning. But it's a very nice practice in which we also meditate on the 8 verses of thought transformation, which is a very wonderful text, especially dealing with developing bodhicitta, and it has a lot of very pointed instructions about how to deal with problems and adverse conditions. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing Saturday and Sunday for all of you who would like to come. Okay, then, and it'll be here, yeah. Yesterday I spoke a little bit about the defects of being self-centered, yeah? And hopefully, you know, if you can contemplate these and remember them, then it comes in very, very helpful in your daily life. One example of this is sometimes we have mishaps in communication with other people, or sometimes other people, for whatever reason, they don't treat us so well. They may lie to us, they may betray our trust, things like this. You know, it happens. We're in cyclic existence, so these kind of things happen. And when these things happen, it's very tempting for us to get really upset and blame the other person and say, oh, I trusted this person so much and they betrayed it and they lied to me and they cheated me and they did this and they did that, and oh, they're such an awful person, and you know, go on and on and on and on about the other person. And when we do that, we're really stuck in our own self-centeredness, and we make ourselves more and more miserable as we contemplate the other person's faults and blame them more and more. Why do we get miserable? Because we can't change their faults. Can we? So the more we focus on what we consider somebody else's faults, the more we feel like a victim who is powerless because we can't change their faults. And so that is, that feeling of helplessness puts us in a victim mentality. It makes us quite upset. Yeah, it doesn't do very much good for us or for anybody else. But another way of viewing the situation could really transform our whole emotional reaction to it. So instead of seeing the situation as somebody else's fault, and they did this and they did that, to say, okay, the other person did these unkind things, but why did they do them to me? The principal cause was my own negative karma that I created in a previous life. Okay? So this other person did a mistaken action. We're not saying that their bad behavior is good, but we are recognizing that we experienced the result of their bad behavior. We were the object of their bad behavior because of our own bad behavior in previous times. Okay? So then to say, okay, somebody's lying to me. Why do people lie to me? Well, it's because I've lied to other people. And initially, our ego says, I haven't lied to anybody. And then we sit with it a little bit longer and we go, well, maybe little lies. And then we look a little bit more and we realize that we've told some pretty big lies in our life. Yeah? For whatever reason, usually self-centered reasons, aren't they? Yeah, like I was saying yesterday, we don't say, I'm going to lie to benefit everybody in the universe. We're always lying to protect ourselves or to get something for ourselves. So the result of lying is that people lie to us. Okay. Or another result of lying is that even when we tell the truth, people don't believe us. So when we encounter these results that we don't like, of people not believing us or people lying to us, instead of blaming the other person, to look and say, this is the result of my own self-centered thought. There's no sense blaming the other person. I have to blame my own self-centered thought. Okay? And so when we do that, then we come to see that our own self-centered thought is our biggest enemy. And it's also the biggest thing that deceives us, because our selfish mind puts on this big show as if it's going to be our friend and look out for our welfare. And yet, every single unethical action we've ever done has been motivated by our self-centered mind. Okay? Whenever we've stolen something, yeah? Anybody here who's never stolen something, even as a kid? You know? We've all done things like that. You know, why? Looking out for our own selfish benefit. Now, why do we lie to people? Same reason. Why do we talk bad behind their back? Or shout at them to their face? Now, why do we spend hours gossiping? You know, it all boils down to this self-centered thought. So when we see that, and we see that any unhappy results we experience are due to our own actions, our own karma, and that all of our negative karma is the result of motivations prompted by the self-centered thought, then we can trace our own suffering back to this self-centered thought and point the finger at it. Okay? So this method of thinking is actually very helpful when we have different problems. Okay? Because it prevents us from getting angry at other people. Because when we get angry at other people, we only create more negative karma, don't we? Yeah? We might be right, but when we're angry, we still create negative karma. Yeah? And the anger's fed by the self-centered thought. So, in this way, if we really look, we can see the disadvantages of the self-centered thought in our own life. Yeah? And it comes, on a daily basis whenever we experience something unpleasant, to trace it back to our own negative karma, which we did due to the self-centered thought. So again, this doesn't mean we hate ourselves. It doesn't mean we blame ourselves in the same way as we used to blame somebody else for our problems. But what it does mean is that we take responsibility for the events that happen in our life and the circumstances that we face. And instead of blaming others, we realize it comes from our own self-centeredness. And if we really want to be happy, then we have to be very attentive. And when the self-centered mind arises, to, kick it out and not follow it. Yeah. Usually when the self-centered mind arises, we follow its instructions. Yeah, self-centered mind says scream at somebody, and we scream. Okay? Self-centered mind says slam the door and walk out on them, and we slam the door and walk out on them. Okay? So usually we follow the self-centered mind, but that just leads us to so many problems in our life. Yeah? So when we recognize this, then we don't follow it. So in the Buddhist scriptures, they often say that the self-centered attitude is like a big thief. Yeah. If a thief comes in your house, do you say, sit down, have a cup of tea, would you like some biscuits? Are you nice to a thief that's in your house and ask him to hang around and stay a little bit longer? And, oh, you took my television set, but you forgot to take the computer. Here, take my computer too. Yeah, and here's my bank book, and here's a blank check. Yeah, do you do this when a thief comes in your house? I hope not. Okay, but when the self-centered thought comes into our mind, when we just let it come in and do whatever it wants and run the show, it's just like, welcoming a thief into our house. Because the self-centered mind just steals away all of our virtue. It destroys our good karma. It makes so many problems for us and other people. Actually, it makes more problems than a thief, because a thief only harms us this life, but our self-centered thought makes us create negative karma that will harm us in future lives. Okay? So when we really see this clearly, then when that thought comes up to just look out for ourselves, we immediately cut it off in our mind, and we replace it instead by the thought that wishes to cherish others. Okay? And so to replace it by the wish to cherish others, we have to first see the advantages of cherishing others. Okay. Now, we all want others to cherish us, don't we? Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if everybody cherished us? Yeah. So looking at it from that viewpoint, we want others to cherish us because we see that we would be happy. Well, by the same token, if we cherish others, it creates happiness in their lives. And there's so many others. There's only one of me, and there's infinite number, countless number of other living beings. So if we really want to create happiness in the world, then we cherish others because there's so many of them. And His Holiness Dalai Lama always counsels us that if we want to be happy ourselves, the best way is to cherish others. Yeah? So why is that? Because then when we cherish others, they're happy, and then we live in a world with happy people. If we only cherish ourselves, then we do many things that make other people unhappy, and then we have to live with unhappy people. Do you want to live with unhappy people? It's not much fun, is it? Yeah? So in a family, living, being very mean to a family member, and then that family member is unhappy, then we have to live with that unhappy family member. In society, if we look down on other groups in society, maybe other religious groups or ethnic groups or racial groups or socioeconomic groups, whatever it is, but if we cut off some groups from the opportunity to have a good livelihood and to have happiness in society, then those people are going to be unhappy, and then we're going to live in a society with unhappy people. And what happens when people in society are unhappy, there's demonstrations, there's protests, there's riots, there's all sorts of social unease. Yeah? But when everybody in a society takes care of each other and creates a more equal society where there's jobs and health care and so on and so forth for everybody, then other people in the society are happy, so everybody lives peacefully. So we see very clearly here the benefits of cherishing others. It really comes back to us, because we live in a happy society. In the US, people don't understand this very well. And so, for example, in many towns, when there is a measure on the ballot to increase taxes in order to build more schools or to enhance education programs, many taxpayers don't want to vote for tax increases because they say, why should I pay for somebody else's children to go to school? They can pay for their own children to go. I shouldn't have to pay taxes for their children to go to school. Well, what happens is when children don't get a good education, and when children don't have good extracurricular activities after school, then they get in a lot of trouble, don't they? And they break into houses, they paint graffiti over the town, they get involved in drinking and drugging and all sorts of unhappy things. And then when these same children, because they didn't get a good education and they didn't have good extracurricular activities and they got into drugs and alcohol, then of course when they're adults they do bigger crimes and they wind up in prison. And then the taxpayers are very happy to spend money to build more prisons. Yeah? And so in the US, prisons is a huge industry now. Seriously. It's not just government prisons. They've started letting private companies run the prisons. So some prisons are run for profit. And they have to show earnings for their shareholders. It's horrible. It's really, really dreadful. Okay? But the taxpayers are very happy to build more prisons. Yeah. But they're not happy to prevent citizens from becoming criminals by giving them a good education when they're children. Okay? So do you see how people aren't thinking very clearly? I can say this about my own country, yeah? Very often people don't think clearly, and they're just looking in the short term for what's beneficial, and in the long term, what happens is more unhappiness for themselves and others, because they were thinking initially and acting out of the self-centered thought. Okay? So when we see this in our personal lives or in society, then we really see why it's so important to not be self-centered. Okay? Because the result comes back to us right away in this life, and it also comes back to us in future lives, and it also inhibits us from attaining liberation and enlightenment. Whereas cherishing other sentient beings brings about the exact opposite result. When we cherish them and we act kind towards them, then they're happy, then we have happiness in our family. Yeah, we have happiness amongst the various groups in society. We have more equality among nations in the world, and so therefore we have more peace and less war. Okay? So there's so many benefits that come from cherishing others. And also, when we cherish others, we create so much good karma. And then we become the ones who experience the result of that good karma. So every time we have happiness in our lives, it's because we created some good karma. And our good karma is mostly created because we thought of benefiting others. Okay? So when there's a chance to cheat somebody in business, we think, of the faults of the self-centeredness and the benefits of cherishing others, and then we don't cheat. Yeah? We do honest business. When we do our business in an honest way, then our clients and our customers trust us, and they're going to come back. When we do business in a dishonest way, and there's bribery and all this kind of stuff going on, then you don't sleep well at night because you know you've done something dishonest that you could get arrested and imprisoned for. Yeah? And if you think it's not going to happen to you, just ask some of the American CEOs who are in prison right now. Okay? So the whole point is that having a kind heart towards others just creates happiness now and in the future. And so it's quite a wonderful practice. Okay. Now, like I've said before, having a kind heart towards others, being loving and compassionate and acting for their welfare, it doesn't mean that you always do what they want you to do. Okay? Because sometimes people are confused about what's going to bring them happiness, and they want things that are actually counterproductive. Yeah. So really caring about other people sometimes means that you have to risk their being unhappy with you. Okay? Parents know this. Yeah? When you're a parent, you can't be in a popularity contest to win your child's friendship. Okay? That's not the job of a parent, is to win a popularity contest with your kids. Your job is to help your kids be good citizens and to help them be happy people. And in doing so, you have to teach them how to deal with the frustration of not always getting what they want. Yeah, and to do that, sometimes you have to tell them no. What they're wanting is something unreasonable or something damaging. And so then your kid, doesn't like you, and they may yell and scream and call you names. But you know that you're really acting for their benefit in the long run. Okay? So this applies in many areas in our life too. Yeah? If you're at work and there's a colleague who doesn't, isn't doing their job properly, you need to go to them and tell them, what the expectations are. But then you also need to help them get the skills to be able to do the job properly. Okay? So, sometimes to help somebody, we may have to say things that they initially don't like to hear, but if we have the courage to say those things and then help the people solve their own difficulties, then very often later they come back and thank us. Okay? Even though at the time they might not have been very happy with us. Okay? So lots of benefit from cherishing others. Okay, let's continue on with the text today, because we only have today and tomorrow to finish this chapter, and I've been going very slowly. Okay. So we finished up to verse 10. Okay, for the sake of accomplishing the welfare of all sentient beings, I freely give up my body, enjoyments, and all my virtues of the 3 times. Yeah. So even if we can't do this now, just imagining and trying to train our mind to think in this way is something very good, and that will actually help us eventually to be able to act like this. So, for example, there's talk about giving away our body, and some of the upcoming verses will talk about this. In actual fact, in the Bodhisattva practice, you're not allowed to give up your body unless you've reached a certain level of spiritual attainment, where you can control your rebirth and make sure you come back with another rebirth in which you're able to practice the Dharma. But before you get to that particular stage, you're not actually allowed to give away your life, voluntarily. Yeah. So don't worry, you don't have to do it tonight. But as a warm-up procedure, we imagine giving our body away. So even though we may not, have the courage to do it, or we may not have the spiritual attainments to do it, we think of, for example, if somebody has kidney failure, giving them our kidneys, or giving them lungs, or giving them our heart. We start out thinking of giving body parts. Or, if there's a way, we think of, if there's a way, that sacrificing our life would rescue somebody else who was in danger, then being willing to do that. So even though we're not actually at the level that we can do it now, just to cultivate that ability to be able to give our body, the thought to be able to give our body. Okay? Some of you may know the story of the Buddha in a previous life when he was a bodhisattva, and he appeared as he was a prince. Yeah, have you heard this story? There's a place in Nepal called Namo Buddha where they say this event occurred. So the prince was walking in the forest one day, and he saw a mother tiger who had just given birth to some little tiger cubs. Okay? And the mother tiger was starving, and so she couldn't nurse her cubs. And the cubs were going to die, if they didn't have food. And so the prince, who was the Buddha in a previous life, who was a bodhisattva at that time, had great compassion for the mother tiger and for the baby tigers. And so he gave his body to the mother tiger for her to eat, so that by eating it, she would have strength, she could produce milk, and she could feed her cubs, and so that they would all live. So it was, a great sacrifice of the bodhisattva's own body to be able to keep some other sentient beings alive. Yeah? So although we may not be able to do it, yeah, just thinking, someday may I have the courage, may I have so little attachment to my body one day that I can do that. And in the meantime, what we can do is imagine giving away our body in the sense of imagining our body being able to manifest in many different forms according to what sentient beings need. So imagine that we're able to become doctors for people who need doctors, or medicine for people who need medicine, nurses for people who need nurses. This was like the verse we covered before. Imagine that we're able to multiply and emanate many different kinds of bodies according to what sentient beings need. And so just even meditating in this way on the level of imagination can plant seeds in our own mind stream, so that one day when we actually are bodhisattvas and we actually have the skill to be able to emanate many bodies, that we're able to do so. Okay? So same way when we talk about giving away our enjoyments or our wealth, it doesn't mean you have to empty out your bank account tonight. Yeah? You could become a little bit more generous. That never hurt anybody, okay? But we don't have to give everything away. But we also, in our meditation, can imagine giving everything away. Yeah, maybe practically speaking we can, but in our meditation, in order to create the mind that takes delight in giving, we can imagine giving away, your flat, or your food, or your car, or your computer, or different things that you have, and imagine giving them away and other people experiencing delight and happiness when you do that. Okay? And the same with giving away our virtue. I was telling you last night about the man who was afraid to give away his virtue because he thought he would lose it, and he doesn't have very much. But instead to practice giving away our virtue and imagining that it becomes the realizations on the path to enlightenment, and that we send those out to all the different beings. Or imagining that our virtue becomes all the conducive circumstances for others to practice the Dharma, and we send that out. Okay? And so when we do that, then we really think of how happy other beings are going to be when they receive our generosity. So instead of feeling, if I give, I won't have it, instead we feel, if I give, others will have it and they'll be happy. And it brings such happiness to our own heart to think of other beings being happy as a result of our generosity, that then we want to give because they feel happy and we feel happy. Okay? Whereas when we're miserly, our own heart is really very tight and not so happy at all. How many of you have heard my cashmere sweater story about my own miserliness? You haven't heard my cashmere sweater story? Okay, a few people have. Well, I'm going to tell it again, so you have to listen again. But the new people, you haven't heard it. But this is a situation from my own life which very clearly illustrates the disadvantages of self-centeredness and miserliness, and the advantages of generosity and cherishing others. A number of years ago, I was invited to teach in the former Soviet countries. And so I was traveling to several of the countries in the Soviet bloc, or the ex-Soviet bloc. And at one point I was in the Ukraine, and I was traveling with somebody who was my translator, and we were taking trains, and we had a layover in Kiev. And he had a friend in Kiev, And so we went to spend the day with his friend Sasha in Kiev, Ukraine. So we get to Sasha's flat. She was young, in her early 20s, and she didn't have very much. And we just popped in out of nowhere. She didn't know before that we were coming. But she fed us the whole day. Like I said, she didn't have very much, so we ate different kinds of potatoes. Yeah, and a little bit of cabbage. And then she had some chocolate that she had stashed away for a special occasion, and she brought out this chocolate to give to us because we were her guests. And then on the way, she accompanied us to the train station that evening, and we were taking the MRT, in Ukraine to the train station. And Sasha, like I said, had very little. And she and I were about the same size. And I had in my suitcase a maroon cashmere sweater. Okay. Now, when you're a nun, and you can only wear maroon, and maroon isn't always found every time in the store, yeah? When you find a maroon sweater, you treasure it. And a cashmere sweater, cashmere, how soft it is and nice. So somebody had given me, one time when I was in Japan, they had given me this maroon cashmere sweater, which I loved, okay? So we're on the subway going to the train station. And I get the idea that I should give Sasha my maroon cashmere sweater. So as soon as I had that thought, another part of my mind said, no way. And thus began an internal civil war, okay? So my friend and Sasha were chatting happily on the subway, and I was in civil war, because one part of my mind is saying, Sasha has nothing, give her your sweater. And the other part of my mind is saying, but if I give her my sweater, I won't have it. And then the other part said, but look, you're practicing the bodhisattva deeds, What's this about clinging onto your own possessions when she needs it more? No, I'm not giving it. So it's going back and forth like this. I was completely miserable. We get to the train station. Sasha goes away, and she comes back with some sweet rolls for us that she had bought at the train station. She has very little money. What does she spend it on? Some sweet rolls for us. So I'm sitting there going, children, what's wrong with you? It's like you can get another sweater. It's no problem. And look at how generous she is when she has nothing. You have so much, and you can't even give her your sweater. And then my mind is going, no way, I'm not giving her that sweater. I like it too much. I'll never find another one like this. So then we get on the train. Okay, so the train, it's a few minutes before the train leaves, and so Sasha gets on the train with us to chat with us until it leaves. And, my sweater is in my suitcase, so it goes under the bed. So then I say, oh, well, I can't give her the sweater now. It's in the suitcase under the bed. If I pull the suitcase out, the train will start going, and then Sasha will have to jump off. And so I can't take the sweater out now, just forget it, And then the other part of my mind is saying, come on, give her your sweater. So finally, I just got so fed up with my own internal civil war, I pulled out the suitcase, I took out the sweater, and I handed Sasha my sweater. And her face lit up. It was incredible. She was so happy. And when I saw how happy she was, I said to myself, what was wrong with me that I would hold on to something when it was so easy to make somebody else so happy. Yeah. And, you know, this incident just really stuck in my mind. And she loved that sweater, because the next week, on the way back, I stopped in Kiev again for the day, and she met me at the train station. And it was really hot outside, but she was wearing the sweater anyway. Yeah. So it just, you know, it was just an experience from my own life about how being miserly and self-centered, it's, you know, it makes our own self miserable, and we miss such an opportunity to make other people happy. And yet when we just extend ourselves a little bit, sometimes we can give so much happiness to others. Okay, verse 11. Surrendering everything is nirvana, and my mind seeks nirvana. If I must surrender everything, it is better that I give it to sentient beings. Okay, so surrendering everything is nirvana. Nirvana is the state of liberation from cyclic existence. It's the cessation of all of our suffering and all of the mental afflictions that cause our suffering. Okay? And so surrendering everything, it means not only physical things, but it means surrendering our ignorance, our clinging attachment, our resentment, our jealousy. Okay? And our mind is seeking liberation. So if we really want liberation, we have to give up our attachment to worldly things, because that attachment prevents us from attaining the higher happiness of liberation. So if I must surrender everything, it is better that I give it to sentient beings. Okay? Now, at the time that we die, we surrender our body, our possessions, our friends and relatives. Okay, we don't necessarily surrender our ignorance, anger, and attachment when we die. All of our objects of attachment we're separated from at the time of death. Okay, we don't take our body with us. We don't take our money and our possessions with us. We don't take our friends and relatives with us. Okay? Maybe I should say, you know, even when you burn all the bank notes from the bank of hell, you know, and all the houses and computers and refrigerators, the paper houses and paper computers and paper refrigerators, and those don't go on to your friends and relatives, you know. When we die, everything stays here. Doesn't matter how much stuff people burn for us, we don't get it. Okay, so at the time of death, we have to separate from all these things. And considering that we're going to have to separate from things anyway, wouldn't it be better to give them away with a spirit of generosity and use those things to create merit by giving generosity? Because when we die, you know, our wealth doesn't come with us, but our good karma from being generous does come with us. You know, why are you born in a wealthy, prosperous country like Singapore? Did you ever wonder that? You know, why weren't you born in Darfur? You know, you have such prosperity here in Singapore. Why? It's because of being generous in a previous life. Yeah? And so seeing that, then you see, oh, you know, generosity creates wealth. So then we want to create, you know, to be generous. Not just so that we'll have a good rebirth, but also because it directly benefits others, and also because we want to nourish our own mind with the good karma of generosity, because that will help us also attain liberation and enlightenment. Okay? So seeing that we're going to have to separate from things anyway, and seeing that generosity creates so much merit, then doesn't it make sense to be generous with the things that we're going to have to separate from anyway? Yeah? Doesn't it make sense? You know, use the things that we have to our advantage to create merit, because that merit will come with us to the next life. Some years ago, actually it was 20 years ago, when I was living here in Singapore, there was one young man in his early 30s who was dying, and he asked me to come and kind of counsel him. He was dying of cancer. And so we spent a lot of time together, and he had a very generous heart. It was quite amazing. And he gave everything away. He knew he was dying of cancer. He was only 31 or 32. But he gave everything away. And his most prized possession were his books. Yeah, so his books were the last thing that he gave away, but he also gave those away. It was very beautiful to see him being so generous before he died. And actually, I was there at the time he died, and the last thing he said was to his sister, and he said, "Remember to make offerings to the temple after I die. You know, remember to give anything left over that I might have away to other people." And so I thought, you know, that he was so wise in how he practiced, because at the time of death he couldn't take anything with him. And yet that whole time as he was dying, he created so much good karma by being generous. So verse 12, "For the sake of all beings, I have made this body pleasureless. Let them continually beat it, revile it, and cover it with filth." Let me go on to the next verse. I'll explain them together. "Let them play with my body. Let them laugh at it and ridicule it. What does it matter? I have given my body to them." Okay, so these two verses sound a little bit strange. Like, you know, why should we give our body to beings who are going to revile it and kick it and cover it with filth and stuff like that? It's like, what's this verse talking about? Actually, what these two verses are trying to get us to do is to develop a state of mind in which we are not attached to our body. Yeah. Why? Because when we die, if our mind is attached to our body, it becomes very difficult to die peacefully, because there's a lot of attachment and craving for our body. If we imagine in our meditation giving away our body, and we give up our attachment to our body, then when the time of death comes, if the hiccups, then when the time of death comes, you know, we're not clinging and craving our body. And so then the mind can separate from the body very peacefully without clinging or craving. So these two verses are designed just to get us thinking about giving away our body without being attached to it. Verse 14, "Let them have me perform deeds that are conducive to their happiness. Whoever resorts to me, may it never be in vain." Okay, so well, let me explain this in the next verse together. The next verse says, "For those who have resorted to me and have an angry or unkind thought, may even that always be the cause for their accomplishing every goal." Okay? So, may we, when it says, let them have me perform deeds that are conducive to their happiness, what we're saying to ourselves is, I'm going to dedicate my body and life to being of service to other sentient beings. And so let other sentient beings use my body and life in whatever way will bring them the utmost happiness. Okay, that's what that verse is saying. So in our own heart, we're dedicating our body and our life and our energy and our time and our service so that everything we do can be of benefit to all sentient beings. Yeah? And so that whenever any sentient being comes to us and asks for help, that we can always respond. May they never ask for help in vain. In other words, may we never, out of our own selfishness, turn them away. Of course, if people are asking for something that we don't have, we have to say, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Or if people are asking us to do something that we don't have the skills to do or the time to do, we have to say, I'm very sorry, I can't do that. But what these verses are getting us to think about is if we have the time and the skill or the material things and somebody asks for help, then let us give help according to our ability. Okay? So it's helping us to loosen the shackles of our own stinginess and our own self-centeredness, and instead to broaden our mind and really think of the benefit of others and the good that we can do for them. Okay? And may even those who have resorted to us, in other words, even people who come to us and ask for help, even if they have an angry or an unkind thought towards us, may that still be the cause for their accomplishing every goal. So what bodhisattvas do is they pray that every interaction they have with any sentient being be something that in the long term benefits that sentient being. Okay? So a bodhisattva, even if somebody is angry with them or criticizes them or is rude to them, the bodhisattva will respond by making prayers for that person and by saying, in the future, when I meet that person in this life or in future lives, may I be able to teach them the Dharma. Now we have some karmic connection because they met me. Even though when they met me, they swore at me or they stole my stuff or they cheated me or they trashed my reputation behind my back, even though they were mean to me, even though they were angry at me, we still made some karmic connection. And by the power of that connection, when I meet them in the future, may we have a good relationship that's based on the Dharma, and may I be able to benefit them in the Dharma. Isn't that an incredible way to respond when other people harm us? Yeah? Do you ever respond like that when other people are mad at you? Yeah? We usually respond with, go to hell, But a bodhisattva says, may I meet you in the future and lead you to perfect enlightenment. Yeah? May our having met, and even if you don't like me, even if you're angry with me, may it in the long term benefit you because we have this karmic connection and I'm going to work for your benefit in the future. Isn't that a beautiful way to react? Okay? So this is a way to react that we should practice. Instead of, getting so angry when people do things we don't like, we should, react with a kind prayer that, okay, even by this karmic connection, may I turn this karmic connection to something beneficial in a future life and lead that being on the path to enlightenment. One of my teachers many years ago, came to Los Angeles. I happened to be in Los Angeles at that time, and I had the great privilege of cooking for him. He had to endure my terrible cooking. But one day, some of the disciples invited us to go to the beach. And my teacher was quite elderly at the time. And we were walking along the beach in Santa Monica. And there were all kinds of sea anemones. And sea anemones, I think they're sea anemones or sea urchins. You can correct me. They're the ones, they're kind of stuck. I mean, they aren't an animal that moves around, but when you stick something in their mouth, it kind of closes over it. Do you know what I mean? Do you have those kind of animals here, sea anemones? Anyway, there's something, and if something, like that's how they eat. Some little fish or something, insect comes there, and then they close around it and digest it. So my teacher, he was going to the sea anemones, and he had his prayer beads, and he would put the prayer beads in the sea anemone's mouth, and they would start to close their mouths over the prayer beads. He would pull it out, of course, before they completely shut their mouths. And at first I was thinking, why is he doing this? And then I realized he's making a karma connection with these sentient beings. That was the only way, there's these very ignorant sentient beings, these sea anemones, that was the only way he could make some karmic connection, was by taking his prayer beads that he had used to count so many mantra, and, having them touch it, and him making a prayer whenever his prayer beads touch these different sea anemones. Okay? So it made me think, that whenever you see different sentient beings, even if it's spiders or cockroaches or, whatever it is, that you make a prayer that just by us having this karmic connection, may I be able to benefit you in a future life. Yeah? It's a beautiful kind of way to react, isn't it? So it's something that's very nice to train our mind in. Okay, next verse. Verse 16, may those who falsely accuse me, who harm me, and who ridicule me, all partake of awakening. Okay, so instead of wishing harm to people who falsely accuse me of doing things that I didn't do, of people who interfere with my happiness and harm me physically or verbally, who ruin my reputation or who treat me unfairly. May all those who ridicule me and make fun of me and tease me about things I'm sensitive to, may all these beings become fully enlightened Buddhas. Isn't that beautiful? Don't you think so? I mean, it's so different from our ordinary way of thinking, isn't it? Yeah? Somebody makes fun of us, I'm going to make fun of you back. Yeah? Somebody ruins my reputation, I'm going to ruin your reputation worse. Yeah, we are so full of vengefulness. And yet our vengefulness, when we act out of revengefulness and that self-centered mind, we're only creating the karma for ourselves to be born in the hell realm. Yeah, there's absolutely no benefit to being vengeful, and harming somebody back who harmed us. Yeah, no benefit at all. It only harms us as well as harms them. And here, what a beautiful way to deal with the situation is to wish that person well. Yeah, even though they harm us, even though they do things we don't like, to wish them well. Okay. Verse 17, may I be a protector for those who are without protectors, a guide for travelers, and a boat, a bridge, and a ship for those who wish to cross over. May I be a lamp for those who need light, a bed for those who seek rest, and may I be a servant for all beings who desire a servant. Okay, so then this is the same kind of thought. May I become whatever sentient beings need. Yeah. So now maybe we don't have that ability, but after we become Arya Bodhisattvas, in other words, Bodhisattvas who have realized the nature of reality directly, we will have the ability to emanate many different kinds of forms, and we can actually become these kinds of things for the sentient beings who have the karma to receive them. Okay? If sentient beings don't have the karma to receive these things, then bodhisattvas and Buddhas can't manifest as them. But for the sentient beings who have the karma to receive the aid that they need, then very often bodhisattvas can emanate, different bodies as either people or even as inanimate objects for the benefit of those sentient beings. Okay, so can I be a protector for those who are without a protector? Yeah, so animals who need protection from human exploitation, human beings who are being oppressed, may we become their protectors. Can we become a guide for travelers? So travelers who are lost, who are fearful in a strange place, may we show them the way. May we become a boat and a bridge and a ship for those who wish to cross over. Okay, so not only cross over a body of water, but may we become a guide on the path to enlightenment that helps sentient beings cross the ocean of cyclic existence. May I become a lamp for those who need a lamp, who seek a lamp, a bed for those who seek rest, and may I be a servant for all beings who desire a servant. Okay? So regardless of how sentient beings treat me, if they lay on me because I'm a bed, if they boss me around because I'm a servant, I'm willing to be that because it's something that is of benefit to others. Okay? So reading these kind of verses and thinking in this way, it really helps us to reduce our ego. Okay? Because our ego is always saying, I want servants, and other beings should help me, and I should be the object of other beings' generosity. Yeah? But here we're really training our mind to see it in the exact opposite way. And so it's a way of training our mind in virtue and creating that, habitual mental attitude to look out for the welfare of all beings. And by creating that mental attitude, it becomes easier and easier to give to others. Okay? Verse 19, to all sentient beings may I be a wish-fulfilling gem, a vase of good fortune, an efficacious mantra, a great medication, a wish-fulfilling tree, and a wish-granting cow. Okay, now some of these are ancient Indian symbols. Okay, a wish-fulfilling gem is a gem that in ancient Indian culture was said to be somewhere in the bottom of the sea, and if you found it, you could wish for any material object and you could get it. Okay, a vase of good fortune, that's the same idea. A mantra that could cure illness, a great medication that could remedy sentient beings' physical suffering, a wish-fulfilling tree, that proverbial tree that grows money. Yeah? So may I become a tree that grows money for all those who need money. And a wish-granting cow, that's also another ancient Indian symbol of a cow that can grant all wishes. So just saying, may I be able to provide what sentient beings need. Okay? Just as the earth, verse 20, just as the earth and other elements are useful in various ways to innumerable sentient beings dwelling throughout infinite space, so may I be in various ways a source of life for the sentient beings present throughout space until they are all liberated. So just as earth, water, fire, and air are useful to all sentient beings, just as they're the basis of all life on our planet, just as these things are useful to sentient beings throughout infinite space, so in the same way, may I be a source of life for sentient beings. May I be the basis of their happiness. Yeah? May I be the support that they can depend upon whenever they need anything, whether they need friendship or they need, a torch. Whatever they need, may I become that. And may I do that until they are all liberated. Okay? So beings who need friends, may I be a friend. Okay? For those who need a happy coworker, may I be a happy coworker. For those who need a son or daughter, may I be a cooperative son or daughter. Yeah? For those who need a mediator who's going to try and heal a relationship, may I be a mediator. Yeah? So may I be the people that others need. May I become the material objects that they need. May I even become earth, water, fire, and air, the basic elements that form what other sentient beings need. Okay? And may I do this for all sentient beings throughout infinite space until they attain liberation. So we're making this wish not just for our friends, not just for the people that we like, but also for enemies, for strangers, for people we disapprove of or dislike. May we become what they need and ease their suffering, and may we lead them on the path to liberation and full awakening. Okay? So it's these kinds of verses are so expansive, They're so expansive that sometimes when we read them, we think they sound crazy. But if we train our mind in them, our own heart opens and becomes so big, and we realize an incredible source of joy and happiness within our own selves. Okay? Because we develop this amazing love and compassion that's impartial towards all sentient beings, and we eliminate our own attachment and miserliness that make us so miserable. Okay, so we'll pause here after verse 21, and then we'll do the rest of the chapter tomorrow. Please read the rest of the chapter. It's the actual process of taking the Bodhisattva vow and generating the bodhicitta, so it's good if you read this. Okay, so questions now. I still have my ever-growing pile of questions, but you can add some more to it. Okay, please tell us more about the situation of Western monastics in the U.S. I was told that some monks and nuns need to wear laymen's clothes to work in private jobs, and then at night put on their robes, their monastic robes. Does the Abbey provide them monastic training and shelter so that they can improve in order to improve the Western monastic order? Unfortunately, the situation of Western Buddhist monastics in the West it's a difficult situation. At least for those of us who are in the Tibetan tradition, because the Tibetans themselves are a refugee community, so they take care of their own Tibetan monks and nuns who are living as refugees in India, or the native ones who are still in Tibet. But the Westerners are not provided for. Somehow there's the assumption that if we're Western, we must have money, which is not always the case. And so it is the case that some Western monastics are forced to, they don't have a monastery to live in, or a temple or a Dharma center to live in. And so they're forced to go to work to earn money. And so they have to put on lay clothes to do that, and then in the evening put on their robes. So for some people, they do that. I made a very strong determination when I ordained 31 years ago that I was never going to do that, and so I've never had to. I've been in situations where I've been extremely poor, but I never did that. But I do know other people who are doing or have done that. So it's a difficult situation. One of the reasons that I'm creating Shravasti Abbey is so that people who have the monastic inclination will have a place to live and have room and board. You know, so all the monastics and even the lay people who come to stay at the Abbey, we don't charge anything. Yeah, and we operate purely on donations. And people, when I started the Abbey, they told me I was completely nuts to do this. But, you know, we've managed so far. We depend completely on donations from people. But what this does is it provides an opportunity for Western monastics and for people, and when I say Western, I don't mean necessarily people with white skin. I mean people who are non-Tibetans. So actually, Western isn't the right word to use. I was saying for non-Tibetan monastics, you know, a place where they can come and train, you know, and not have to worry about room and board. So this was one of my ideas in starting the Abbey. And also to give a place where people can have monastic training, because clearly if somebody has to go out and work a job, they don't get the monastic training that they need, and therefore it's hard for them to remain as a monastic, and even if they do, it's hard for them to really teach others because they haven't had the proper conditions to study and practice themselves. And so, you know, the Abbey is a place where we're at the beginning now, you know, but where we can really practice and learn the monastic discipline so that we can have more teachers that can be sent out to teach, and where lay people can come and live with the monastic community and practice together with us and come on retreats, and where people who are thinking of ordaining can come and stay and live with the monastics to see if it's a way that they enjoy and a way that they want to continue doing that. Okay? So we're one of the first places like this in the US. And yeah, so you're all welcome to come. And I should tell you, the way the Abbey is, in our Dharma teachings, we're going to be studying according to Tibetan Buddhism primarily, but in our monastic training, we're going to take the lineage, the Chinese lineage. Okay? So, for example, I was ordained, my full ordination was in Taiwan, so I have the Chinese lineage, even though I wear the Tibetan robes. Okay, so the whole Abbey, Shravasti Abbey, will be like this. Yeah? Okay, what else? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me finish. Okay, because of their noble intentions, Buddhists generally become more docile, and people with other religious attitudes become more successful in life. If I become more successful, I may have more power and money, etc., to benefit more people. What's your opinion? First of all, I don't think that becoming a Buddhist necessarily makes you more docile. Yeah, it makes you more patient. But if you really understand the Bodhisattva intention correctly, it doesn't make you docile. Compassion doesn't mean that you let that you let other people walk all over you. Okay, it doesn't mean you become a doormat. That's not compassion, that's stupidity. Okay, there's a big difference between compassion and stupidity. Yeah, so, it doesn't mean that you have to just be docile, whatever somebody wants, fine. No, you can be very assertive and you can be straightforward, but you're also honest and truthful and looking out for the welfare of everybody in the situation. Okay? It may seem that people of other religions are more aggressive and so they're going to get the promotion and da-da-da-da-da. But, like I said, I've been saying the last few nights, I don't necessarily see that as the measure of success in life. Yeah, I don't see having a higher status job or having lots and lots of money. It's successful by societal standards, but by my standards, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're more successful, because how I define success is people who are happy and people who are creating virtue so that when they die, they can die peacefully. And I define success as people who are creating the causes for liberation and enlightenment. Okay? So there's different definitions of success, and you have to see who was more successful in which areas. Some people can be successful in both areas. Okay? They can have a high status in society, they can have money, and they can also be quite generous and create a lot of virtue. Okay? Then there are some people who are successful in a societal way, but not successful in their life. They have a ton of money and they're wealthy, but they're also miserable. Then there's other people who are very successful in their private life. They're very happy, they have virtuous intentions. When they die, their death is very smooth, they're on their way to enlightenment, but they don't have a lot of money. And then there's some people that are not successful in either area. Okay? So we have to really think what success is. Okay, so the question is, how can we help those victims in the recent Nepal crisis? Can we chant for them? Well, first of all, the recent thing is not in Nepal, it's in Tibet. Okay, they're different countries. Yeah? But I think whenever we see social unrest, that it's very good to send compassion to those areas, and to have compassion for everybody in the whole situation. Yeah? So there's unrest in many parts of the world. Iraq also. There's war, there's unrest. In Kenya there was things going on a few weeks ago. So wherever we see unrest and people who are unhappy, then to generate compassion and send them compassionate wishes, these conflicts can be resolved in a way that brings happiness to everybody who's involved in them. And so that the conflicts can be resolved without anybody getting hurt or injured. Okay, so what does it mean when we say that karma is ripening? Okay, So karma ripening means that, karma is our actions, so actions that we've done in the past. And the ripening of karma means that these actions bear their results. So like I was saying before, that generosity is the cause of wealth, and lying to others is the cause of being lied to. Okay? So you have this relationship between the actions, such as generosity and lying, and their results, such as being wealthy and being lied to. Okay? So karma ripening means that the actions were done, there's been a seed planted in the mind stream, and now that seed is ripening and bringing the result. So that's what karma ripening means. And then this person's question is they say that they've heard that sometimes when you are a novice monk or nun, that some of your karma will ripen faster. So if so, why? It depends, not necessarily karma doesn't ripen faster, because remember, karma means good karma and it also means bad karma. Yeah. So in some situations, because a person may be practicing purification, then some of their bad karma may ripen more quickly, but we always say that that's very good, because that karma ripens in a small illness or something going wrong this lifetime, whereas it could have ripened in a huge amount of suffering in the future rebirth. So if a monastic or anybody's doing purification practice, sometimes that negative karma may ripen. You may fall ill, but when you do, you should say fantastic, because that was the karma that could have ripened in me being born in the hell realm for an eon. And compared to being born in the hell realm for an eon, being sick for a few days is okay. Yeah. Similarly, it could sometimes be that when we are ordained and engaging in a practice of virtue, that our good karma ripens more. Because when we abstain from harmful actions, then we create situations in which our good karma can ripen more easily. When we do negative actions, not only do our negative actions create the negative karma, which will ripen in the future, but just the circumstances of the negative actions very often create the possibility for our previously created negative karma to ripen very quickly. Okay? So, for example, I was telling you that I do social outreach with inmates, with prisoners. So some of these people, they do a crime, so they create negative karma that will ripen maybe in their future life, but by creating a crime, they also wind up in prison this life. Okay? Or they also wind up having somebody else shoot them or stab them or whatever. Yeah. So often when we're in situations where we do negative actions, it makes it easier for other people, to harm us. In other words, it makes it easier for our own negative karma to ripen. Okay. Similarly with people who are drinking and drugging. Yeah. When you're drunk, when you're intoxicated, it's very easy for your negative karma to ripen, because you don't have very much control over your mind. Okay? Okay. If I plan to join retreats or become a nun in the long term, how should I prepare myself? Okay. Well, if you want to join retreats, joining retreats and becoming a monk or a nun are two different situations, so I'll talk about them separately. If you want to join a retreat, you can prepare yourself by doing some reading on the topic of the retreat before you go to it. That is very good. You can also prepare yourself by starting to have a daily meditation practice. When you start going to retreats, it's good to start with short retreats. Okay, so like the 2-day retreat this weekend, it's a good one to start with. It's only 2 days. Okay, and it's also not a live-in retreat, so you don't have to wake up so early in the morning to meditate. You got it easy, yeah. But you can begin by going to shorter retreats, and then as you get familiar with the process of doing more meditation and more retreats, then start attending longer retreats. It's very nice to do group retreats because the group energy and group discipline makes it very easy for us to practice ourselves. We find this very much at the Abbey. People who live at the Abbey, and then also the people who visit us, tell us that it's so much easier for them to do their meditation practice at the Abbey because everybody is doing it. Okay, so we have 2 meditation periods a day, in the morning and in the evening. So everybody is getting up early, everybody's going to meditate, so it becomes very easy to do it, yeah, because everybody's doing that. We have a study period, we have a teaching period. It becomes very easy to go to teachings, it becomes very easy to study, because everybody's doing it. So when you live in a community like that, the support of everybody else really strengthens your own practice. So if you want to visit a community, that can strengthen your own practice in the short term. But if you want to live in a monastic community, then of course you get the long-term benefits from that. If you are thinking of ordaining, there's a number of things you can do to prepare. On my website, tuptenchudran.org, there's a whole section about monastic life and a lot of different things. You can read articles, there's a reading list. It's good if you're thinking about ordaining to go and spend some time in a monastery and see how you like it. At the Abbey, we have a program every summer that is about 2.5 weeks long, called Exploring Monastic Life. And it's for people who are thinking, maybe I would like to ordain. In other words, they haven't decided that they want to, but they're thinking, maybe I should, I want to find out more about it. So then, they apply to come to our Exploring Monastic Life program. And then in the program, we talk about different issues related to ordination and things that you have to work out. And so it's quite a wonderful program, and people live together as a community, they work together, so they get the experience of community. So these are things you can do. Also, if you're thinking of ordaining, or even if you aren't thinking or are not thinking of ordaining, living with the 5 precepts is a very, very beneficial practice to do. Okay, so taking the 5 precepts to abandon killing, stealing, unwise sexual behavior, lying, and intoxicants, or even if you can't take all 5, take 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then take those precepts and live according to them. And that's a very, very good way to train your mind if you're thinking of becoming a monastic, or even if you're not. It's still a very good way to train your mind and your body and your speech to living in an ethical way. And then, of course, you experience all the benefit of living ethically, right now, and in terms of all the good karma that you create. Okay, so now I have even a bigger pile of questions than I started off with. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. By the way, on my website, I have a few different websites. One is Shravasti.org, and that's the Abbey's website, which you're welcome to look at. And then there's tuptenchudran.org, and that one, the web keepers are all Singaporeans. And so they keep that website updated with different Dharma talks that I've given, or that are in audio or video form, or articles, There's all sorts of material on that website. So if you pick up one of the pink brochures on your way out, you can find the websites, the URLs listed there, and then you can go on them and download material or read or whatever you like. Okay, so let's sit quietly for a minute, and then we'll dedicate. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.